All right, that's a win. That is the fifth win in the last 21 games for this Reds team, but it's a win. 1-0, their second 1-0 defeat of the season, or 1-0 win of the season. And it at least allows us to look at some positive things. We're going to do that here on today's Locked On Reds podcast. I'll wrap up the series. I kind of didn't get this one recorded real quick after their bad loss on Tuesday night, so I figured I'd wait till the end of today's game and just wrap it all up as a whole. We'll talk about all of it here on the Locked On Reds podcast. Thank you so much for joining. I'm your host, Jeff Carr. Thank you for watching. If you're here on YouTube, if this is your first time, make sure that you're subscribed. And if you're listening to me on your favorite podcasting app, thank you so much for that. And make sure you're following me right there on that app. All right, coming up here, we're going to get going. Before we do, I wanted to let you know after today's show, go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, has a wealth of knowledge, both past and present, when it comes to the game of baseball, and he imparts it to you each and every day. Go check out the Locked On MLB podcast after we're done here today, wherever you get your podcasts.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Reds podcast. We are free on all platforms now when it comes to YouTube or any podcasting app you can think of. Thank you so much for finding me today. The Reds didn't get swept, and that would have been absolutely terrible. I mean, obviously, you'd rather win than lose, but we're talking about a Pirates team who has no series sweeps at all this season. And it really kind of filtered out there in the ninth inning as Michael Givens allowed two base runners. Guy got to third. Granted, it was with two outs, but all in all, he was able to pitch around it. And Tyler Mahle, what a performance by him, just limiting the damage. There were a lot of innings where guys were on base. He had to pitch around that, but for the most part, pitched really well. He continues his dominance away from Great American Ballpark. He now has a 1.85 ERA, and we're talking about a large sample size too, 97 innings for Tyler Mahle with a 1.85 ERA on the road this year. Worth noting that, should the Reds make some kind of run and make it to that wild card game, it could be an argument as to who should start. It might be interesting to see where the Reds are at that point, if they even make it there, but I still feel like they've got a shot, and he might be a guy that you look at to start that game. It's also interesting to note that Mahle just still loves pitching against the Pirates. In his career, he has 50 and 2/3 innings total pitched against the Pirates, 9 starts against them. That was his fourth win. He's 4-3. First time I've ever really referenced a record, but it's worth noting in head-to-head matchups. And he has an ERA of 3.04 against Pittsburgh with 44 strikeouts. So good inning, good outing for him all around. He's been a dude that outside of Wade Miley, he's been the Reds' best pitcher, the second best pitcher on the staff all year long, and has absolutely showed his quality and shown that he's starting to grow. I think that he is a top 20 pitcher in the major leagues. I think he's got a shot at really making that next step next year. We'll see exactly what that means for him. I think it starts with pitching better at home, but at least he's pitching good on the road. As far as the lineup goes, hey, 1-0. And that one run was scored on a sacrifice fly. Sometimes you just got to win those games. Sometimes, no matter what, at the end of the day, if you put that W in the call or put a number in the column underneath the W, that's all you care about. The lineup wasn't great. They got shut down by a guy who's thrown a grand total of 7 innings all year long. I think I said on Cincy 360 on ESPN 1530 earlier today that he hasn't pitched at all this year. That's not true. He's pitched 7 innings. And that's his, career mark is 7 innings because this is his first career season. So yeah, not great. But they got shut down by this guy, and they got shut down by a bunch of other dudes coming out of the bullpen. They just got one run, but hey, if you give up 0, then you win. The Reds won. They didn't lose. That's nice to see. Something that is not happened enough over the last 21 games. Like I mentioned, we're talking about like 3 weeks worth of games, and the Reds have won 5. Count them, 5, as they are in the hunt for this wild card spot, second wild card spot. But yeah, they are able to pull the rabbit out of their hat. And hey, Shogo got a double. That's good. 2 hits in 2 days, back-to-back days. That's nice to see from Shogo Akiyama. Maybe he's something down the stretch for the Reds. A couple of weeks ago, we weren't even talking about him, so whatever. Maybe he's something for the Reds. Off the bench or, getting spot starts here and there like he's gotten, mostly because of injuries. I mean, you've got Tyler Naquin, who, after that collision with Jose Barrero, I think we might see him go on the IL. Not really sure, but it seemed at the time like something that was going to happen, and they have not made that announcement yet, but I think they're waiting on Jesse Winker coming back. There are reports that Winker might be back for this weekend series against the Dodgers, which will be huge because they need all hands on deck for that series, which we'll talk about later on. But the biggest thing that I was excited about was Malley's performance and also the bullpen. Lucas Sims, Michael Lorenzen looked fantastic, and Michael Givens was exactly as good as he needed to be, which leads me to want to talk more about this bullpen because they deserve some credit over these last. We've talked about how much of a struggle these last 3 weeks have been. The bullpen's not been one of those struggles. I'll tell you about that here in just a minute. Before we get into that, though, I wanted to let you know that you can bring all of your entertainment under one television screen. If you're watching the game on TV, you've got highlights on your phone, you're using your tablet for streaming, you've got your neighbor's best friend's password for the good stuff, and you're just killing your Wi-Fi bandwidth at home. Stop it. Go to directtv.com today. Learn about DirecTV Stream and bring your television to 2021 and get all of your entertainment under one television screen. With DirecTV, they can bring together your sports, movies, TV shows, and more, all under your main television. Use DirecTV Stream through directtv.com. You can learn more there. Just make sure you got a compatible device for that. Most of us do. But go to directtv.com to learn more about DirecTV Stream and bring your television into the 21st century. That's DirecTV Stream at directtv.com. All right, so it was made mention, and I've seen a couple of people talking about this on Twitter, and something that I've noticed recently is that, you know what, the bullpen's not been all that terrible. So I thought, let's dive in, let's dig in a little bit more. And sure enough, it's not. In fact, we're talking about since August 27th. I kind of marked this on yesterday's podcast, but since August 27th, or at least on yesterday's Lockdown Now, after talking about that horrible loss. And I'm so glad that we had a win to talk about today because I really didn't want to talk too much about that loss. It was, some nice thing. I mean, Kyle Farmer hit a home run off a left-handed pitcher to tie the game, but just overall not great. And they got the win today, so we'll focus more on that. But anyway, since August 27th, when the Reds were 12 games over 500, and this slide kind of started, really, the bullpen's actually been phenomenal. And we're talking about since then, they have the best xFIP in all of baseball. Major League Baseball, everyone. You're talking about the Brewers, the Dodgers, the Padres, the amazing teams like the White Sox and things like that. The Reds, in this small sample size, I get it. It's not the best of sample sizes, but over the last 3 weeks, they have the best xFIP at 3.3 and the best walk rate at 4.9%. They're not giving up walks. It's great to see. Plus, you combine that with the fact they've got the third best strikeout percentage at 27.7 and a BABIP that shows you they're not getting lucky. It's at 303, which is actually right around league average, if not just a slightly tick above league average. But I'm not saying they're getting unlucky by any stretch. It just shows you that this isn't a fluke. It's not a fluky kind of performance. It is a small sample size, so maybe not going too crazy with it, but it's at least nice to see that the bullpen has bounced back a bit. It's interesting to note, too, it's not necessarily the three guys that you're thinking, because I looked at this. The triumvirate, now that TJ Antone, triumvirate, you got to like that word. Now that TJ Antone is out and probably not going to pitch next year either, is Lucas Sims, Michael Lorenzen, and Michael Givens. You've got the Michael and Michael law firm to end the game, and Lucas Sims coming in big situations in the 7th inning or late in the 6th, something like that. Lucas Sims, over his last 7 appearances, has allowed 2 earned runs, 13 strikeouts, hasn't walked anybody, and has only given up 4 hits. That's pretty good. Michael Lorenzen is a little bit not as nice, but still pretty good. I mean, he looked really good yesterday, but he has 3 earned runs allowed over his last 5 appearances. And I forgot to mention, I looked at this on Baseball Reference, so it's not updated with today's numbers, so you can actually bump those up a little bit. You got 8 appearances for Lucas Sims with 2 earned runs and a couple more strikeouts now added on to those 13. You now have 6 appearances for Michael Lorenzen with only 3 earned runs allowed. He has allowed 2 home runs, though, but no walks and 5 strikeouts. He did have a couple of strikeouts today as well. And then Michael Givens, he kind of struggled a little bit. We've seen a little bit more of a, not say human, because it's not as if he's like superhuman when it comes to being a relief pitcher, but he's been better than what the Reds had earlier this season. But over his last 7 appearances, 4 earned runs allowed, and he does have 6 strikeouts. He's got 3 walks, though. He's the one dude in this triumvirate who's given up walks, and he does have a home run allowed as well. So, yeah, your top 3 guys aren't phenomenal, but they're doing you some good. The thing that really gets me is this dude right here, Santillan. We have got to give this guy some love. You want to talk about how good he has been? 9 2/3 innings. This is since, I kind of took the same sample, since August 27th, 9 2/3 innings pitched in 6 appearances, no runs allowed, 11 strikeouts. Just phenomenal. He's given up a handful of hits and stuff, but he has limited that damage. Tony Santillan might be building something for the future. He might be an arm that the Reds can rely on out of the bullpen. And you love to see it. He's really got that great combination of the fastball and that wipeout slider that guys can't touch. I love watching him pitch. And there's one other dude, too, I want to talk about as well, and that's the guy that he came over as part of that player to be named later for 2 relievers from the Yankees, Luis Cessa. Well, Luis Cessa has really been dominant. Over his last 7 appearances, he has 7 strikeouts, no runs allowed, and only 3 hits allowed. He's not walked anybody. We're talking about 3 total base runners allowed by Luis Cessa over his last 7 appearances, and he's got 7 strikeouts to boot. Just love seeing what these guys have brought to the table, but it is a team effort for this bullpen that has been much maligned, and deservedly so. They've been bad all year long, but at least for these last 3 weeks, they've given us a respite. They've given us the ability to hope in this bullpen should everything else kind of come together. They're not going to win too many games 1-0 when they're playing against the Dodgers, and honestly, I don't even want to think about 1-0 games. I want them to score more. I want some more runs out of this lineup. They really had some lethargic looking at bats again against the Pittsburgh Pirates today. It's almost as like they're like, you know what, whatever. We're going to get out of here. If we win, we win, and if not, then we'll figure it out tomorrow. But thankfully, they got that win. And that's going to afford us the opportunity to be a little positive here, to kind of get some good vibes rolling here in this final segment, which we will talk about in just a minute. Before we talk about that, though, I wanted to let you know that you can still take advantage of our offer at betonline.ag. Set up your profile today and enter that promo code Locked On. You'll get 100% more on your initial deposit. And you know what? I get it. Maybe you're not a baseball bettor. Maybe you got some kind of hang up. There's a stigma. There was this guy who played for the Reds that did that and kind of got in trouble. Whatever. That's fine. I get it. But you like you some football. It's football season. Get in on the action at betonline.ag today and set up that promo code Locked On to get 100% more. You've got money lines, you got point spreads when it comes to football, you got run lines when it comes to baseball, which are normally minus or plus 1.5, and you've got the over unders. You got Thursday night football action going on tonight, Washington and New York. I might give you a little bit of tip. I know this isn't a baseball tip, but I'm taking Washington, man. I got them at 3 point and -3. I think Washington's going to win. I think they're going to win big. I think that defense is going to shut down a New York Giants offense that is missing one of their starting offensive linemen. They're still trying to figure out what up with Saquon Barkley. So give me the Washington football team -3 points. I'm taking that and running with it today. That's your tip for me for the betonline.ag. Go there today, set up your profile with the promo code locked on for 100% more on your initial deposit. And also check out rockauto.com for your next auto part. Whether you are restoring an old classic car, maybe you got like a Studebaker or something. Yeah, you got like one of those really old, awesome looking cars, or maybe you're really cool and you got like a Aston Martin DB8. You like James Bond. Maybe James Bond is listening right now to the Locked On Reds podcast. That'd be cool. Go to rockauto.com, James Bond, and get you some parts for your car. Or if you just got an everyday driver, maybe you got a Honda, maybe you've got a Hyundai Elantra, something like that. They got parts for you at rockauto.com. And just in case you're not an expert and you don't really know what you're looking for, I'm telling you, number one, you're going to get reliably low prices. And number two, you're going to get a lot of help because rockauto.com is family owned and they've been doing this for over 20 years. They can help you find exactly what you need and deliver it right to your door. That way you save on parts costs, which are through the roof pretty much wherever you look nowadays. It's shortage this, shortage that. rockauto.com can help you out. Go there today, and in the checkout section in the How'd You Hear About Us area, type in Locked On to let them know that your pal Jeff sent you from the Locked On Reds podcast. That's rockauto.com, and type in Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section. rockauto.com has all of the parts that your car will ever need. Let's be positive. How about it? Let's just have some fun, I mean, whatever. It's the 5th win in 21 games. You can look at it that way. You can look at the fact that they're still behind the Cardinals and the Padres for the wild card spot. I get it, but think of it this way. They have now 15 games left. And I mentioned the other day, if they go 12-4, which is accounting for the fact that they only win one game against the Dodgers and one game against the White Sox, and they can make some hay the rest of the way against the Pirates and the Nationals. If they go 12-4, now 11-4, then they'll finish with 87 wins. That seems phenomenal when it comes to making the second wild card spot. And I believe this team can do that. I feel like the lull that they've been going through is just that. It's a lull. We've had a lot of people lately, whether it be Twitter or callers into radio shows and things like this, people commenting on stuff saying that this is who they are. This is the Reds. They were always going to be a 500 disappointing team. They weren't making the playoffs. And I don't know why I did that voice, but that is where a lot of people's minds have been recently with the Reds. They're like, see, they've showed their true colors. Shown their true colors, and they're not making the playoffs. There's even some people suggesting that they'd finish under 500. Wow. I mean, you want to talk about negativity. I've just been absorbing negativity here recently, and it's really been fighting the optimistic side of me, but optimistic Jeff is not dead. There are still more games left to play, and there's still a chance for this lineup to get right. Now, the problem's going to be they got to do it now this weekend against the Dodgers. And by doing so, I just want them to be competitive, win one game, don't get swept at home. They've played very terrible at home as of they played very terrible overall, but they played very terrible at home recently. And now they are going up against matchups that if you look at what Vegas is going to come out with for the odds and the lines and different things like that, I guarantee you they're going to be underdogs in all three of these games. Guarantee you. Walker Buehler, Max Scherzer, and Clayton Kershaw. Just going to talk about this ad nauseum, hopefully using some reverse psychology. Maybe the Reds lineup can really get going against these guys, but you're talking about 3 former Cy Young winners, just phenomenal pitchers all around. There's not a flaw in their game. You're looking at a Max Scherzer who has been even more Mad Max than normal ever since becoming a Dodger. I think I saw a stat the other day that his ERA is under 1 as a Dodger. Number one, and this might be a rant that I really go on tomorrow. Now, tomorrow we're going to have Jeff Snyder from the Locked On Dodgers podcast join me for a crossover for this series. It'll be the first time I get to talk with Jeff on the podcast. Looking forward to that. It's going to be the Jeff show. But when I look at this and I'm just like, dude, how do you go out and you spend all that money and you get last year's Cy Young Award winner to be in your rotation, and then when, crap hits the fan and he can't pitch anymore, you just go get Max Scherzer? Gosh, what it must be to be a Dodger fan. Anyway, that's not a road I'm ever going to go down. So we got to see what the Reds can do against these guys, because if you can outlast them as they start, it's going to be tough, because if you're talking about Connor Overton shutting out this lineup, then Walker Buehler, Max Scherzer, and Clayton Kershaw could practically fall out of bed and throw a complete game no-hitter against these guys. I tell you what, this is going to be a struggle, but I'm thinking they win 1 out of 2 and they just hang on a little bit more, and then they make some hay next week. They got 7 home games against the Pirates and Nationals next week, and they can really take off. 6-1 is a total possibility. I firmly believe it. I understand that they've been bad lately. You're saying, Jeff, they haven't hit. They've lost to bad teams. They've lost 7 series in a row, including 1 series to the Pirates. How are you even remotely this positive? Because I'm crazy. Yeah, that's what I got. I'm crazy. But I think that they're going to be all right as we finish up the season. I think they are going to be right back in the face of that second wild card spot. They are going to put the pressure on the Cardinals. The Cardinals and the Padres play each other this weekend. So if the Reds, God forbid, if the Reds can take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, boy, we'll be really talking here. But, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens in these next 3 games, because we're talking about 3 games in which the Reds have no business winning. And I think that might be good for them. That might be good for this club, because all they've heard over the last month is, oh, gosh, they're playing easy guys. I've been one of those people saying it. They had a favorable schedule. And what have they done? They've squandered it. Now they're playing a team that should beat them. Let's see what happens. I got a good feeling about it. I don't know why. I think I'm just crazy. But we'll talk to Jeff Snyder from the Locked On Dodgers podcast tomorrow for a crossover to get you set for this series. But that's going to do it for us here today. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Make sure that you're following the podcast on whatever you're currently consuming it on, whether it be watching or listening. And make sure you follow me on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs, and follow the show at Locked On Reds. Save the Locked On Reds line number into your phone at 513-549-0159. I want to hear from you. Reactions. You're probably thinking I'm crazy, because I think most of Reds country by now is either apathetic or just completely negative. Whatever. I choose to be delusional. And we're going to keep on with that right here every single day, talking about the Cincinnati Reds. Make sure that you're following me. I'll talk to each and every one of you tomorrow.